Welcome to the Town of Avon Advisory Plan Commission meeting. If you are interested in having a copy of the agenda or the staff reports, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. We will be conducting business as outlined on the agenda. From time to time, the board may deviate from the agenda. I will inform those in attendance of any deviations, or the president will. This meeting is being recorded to the public for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and all cell phones are set to vibrate with any phone calls taken outside of the chambers. If you are interested in commenting during the public hearing, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to the staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. Responses to public comments will be given once the hearing is closed. We do understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome to our meeting, and please stand for the pledge. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Duvall?
Here.
Mr. Bischoff?
Here.
Mr. Petridis? Mr. Niemeyer?
Here.
Ms. Albers?
Here.
Mr. Gigaberg?
Here.
Ms. Ransberg? We have a quorum.
Just to be clear, it must be a unanimous decision. Just 4? Yep. Next on the agenda, approval of meeting minutes for June 22nd, 2020. Is there any comments? Corrections, errors, omissions? If there's none, we're looking for motion.
I motion that we approve the minutes as printed.
Second.
We have a second on the floor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Committee reports. Town council, none.
RDC, we discussed invoices for Dan Jones and County Road 100 South. We also, let's see, reviewed some access control for Town Hall, Police Station.
Will we be getting badges for that?
Pardon?
Will we be getting badges for that as well? BZA, we had three requests, all were related to the CSX Railway, one for gravel lot, lighting, and the lumens that were coming off of the particular floodlight they were putting in. All three were approved. Any other committee reports this time? None. Moving along. Request for continuance or agenda modifications. Des, is there any at this time? None. Next on the list, public comments. Right now, we're going to open the floor for any public comments for anything that is not on the agenda tonight. If there is, please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Cannon. I'm the interim town manager. I know this is kind of your guys' first meeting since we made some changes on our staff, so I wanted to at least reach out to you, give you guys a heads up, let you know what's going on. KK is here in the crowd. The town has entered into a contract with KK to do some temporary planning for us to kind of get through this transition. We have advertised as well for a new planning director, so we are accepting resumes for that position as well. So I want you to know that even though we're missing some staff, we still plan to get you guys what you need and continue the process through the Planning Commission. So I did also want to recognize Dez. If you guys haven't heard yet, Dez is actually going to be leaving us as well. He has decided to move on and go get his, I believe, MPA, correct, Dez?
Masters in Planning.
Masters in Planning. So August 14th will be his last day. He has been very kind and stayed on a couple extra weeks to help us transition, so I appreciate that. I know all of you have had the opportunity to get to know Dez over the years. He's had 3 years of service here. He's done a great job. If you guys don't know him personally, he's probably the most fun employee that works here at the town hall. We will miss him greatly. He certainly makes us all laugh, and appreciate his service that he's done to the town. So I wanted you guys to know that. You won't see him in August, and he probably won't say anything to you if I don't say something. So again, thanks to Dez for everything he's done and helping us through this transitional time and kind of getting KK up to speed. Hopefully some of you guys have worked with KK in the past. She's excellent. She has a lot of experience with our ordinance, and so you guys will be in good hands. So thank you.
Congratulations, Des. Good luck to you as well. I'm sure I speak for the commission when we all say that we appreciate all your hard work and everything here so far that you've done, and we hope to see you in the future. Anybody else for public comment? Please step forward.
My name's Parag Patel. I live in Timberbends at 6045 White Ash Court. One of the things with the coronavirus, I've done lots more outdoor exercise, started riding my bike, and realized the sidewalks are limited in terms of neighborhoods. The sidewalks end some of the places. I know there's been a lot of capital allocation to building new parks, which are very expensive capital expenditures, but wondering if there's anything you can talk about in the future about completing sidewalks, which I think would be less capital intensive and a better ROI. So that's.
Thank you, sir. Staff will make a note of that and take it to the town council, I'm sure. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move along, and I'll pass the gavel along.
Joint introductions. PUDP, where we at?
Introductions.
Introductions? So under introductions, PUDP 20-2 Avon Logistics Center. Staff report.
I didn't write one, this is just, he's just gonna explain about what projects are coming up, and then you'll get an official staff report, and they'll be
Okay.
back later.
Good evening. I'm gonna fog up my glasses here. Jeff Banning, Banning Engineering, 853 Columbia Road, Suite 101 in Plainfield, Indiana. Oh, thank you very much. Which button do I push? That one? Got it, okay. So we're here this evening, or I'm here this evening, really just to do a brief presentation. This is an introduction. We have actually filed a PUD for the 275-acre site that is currently owned by Farmland Reserve, located on the north side of County Road 100 South between more or less Ronald Reagan and Dan Jones Road. We are looking at developing an industrial park, very similar to like what has happened to the south of it in Plainfield in All Points Midwest. And so we're here this evening as part of the PUD process to do our introduction. We actually were supposed to do an introduction this month. We were wanting to come to the Plan Commission next month as our notified public hearing, but we're actually going to come back next month as well to have an additional introductory discussion with this group. It's a pretty significant project for the town of Avon. First time any sort of industrial development has significantly been developed in Avon. So we wanted to try to go through the process with the Plan Commission to hopefully help get through the process to help everyone to understand that. And really, this evening, in my mind, is more just to ask questions of you. I thought I'd give a brief overview just to give you an understanding of what we're proposing to do. As I'm sure all of you are aware, or at least I hope you're aware, County Road 100 South was just recently bid. There was a design plan done on that. It's going to be widened out and improved. Our project will hopefully coexist and co-construct from a timing standpoint with that project as well. So that kind of gives you a quick overview of what we're looking at. I've got a drawing up here that shows you what we are proposing. As you can see, I know Charles just mentioned CSX is to the north of this site, so me here for everyone to see. So as I said, County Road 100 South is here. This is Smith Road. Sorry, I can point to both.
No.
Okay. I didn't know which one I was looking at. And then you will see that we actually have superimposed the proposed County Road 100 South improvements along here. Thank you very much, Ryan, for getting us that information. For those that might not be aware, there will actually be 3 roundabouts on that. As I said, this is Smith Road, County Road 900 East, and this is Sun Chase, which is a residential development to the east of us. This parcel here is actually owned by Browning Duke, who is the developer of this project down in Plainfield. And then, of course, Burdette Woods is a little bit further west over towards Dan Jones Road. What we are proposing to do is, what we're showing here is actually something that's probably most likely as to what will happen. We show 5 large logistics warehouse type buildings. As I said, nothing like this in Avon today. In our PUD ordinance, we're proposing upwards of about 4.5 million square feet of industrial space or developable space. We are looking at being very similar to what has happened to the south of us down here. So if you drive through that particular area in Plainfield, you will get a sense of what we are looking at. Here is just a conceptual plan of what we're looking at for Building 1. I'm going to go back just a second, apologize. This is Building 1, which we plan to bring to the Plan Commission yet this year. Would like to start construction on that within probably I'm going to say maybe even as early as fourth quarter this year, probably more likely first or second quarter next year. As part of that plan, this is just an elevation view of what we are proposing to do with respect to that building. Here again, we will be bringing that to you as part of the development plan review, as part of a primary and secondary plat. So you will be seeing this project multiple times. We'll probably be at the Plan Commission, I would say, 6 times over the next probably 6 to 9 months. So be prepared to see my face and our team's face here in the near future. One of the things that we're very much aware of, and I'm going to apologize again to an extent, as I said, Sun Chase is the residential subdivision over here. For those that are familiar, Ronald Reagan is over here. So it effectively borders Ronald Reagan all the way to our east property line. As part of our submittal and as part of the PUD process, we're required to go through and have a neighborhood meeting. We had that meeting about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had one gentleman show up, the property owner right here. We've not had any additional comments, but one of the things that I wanted to point out is there is a large wooded buffer area that is actually part of the Sunchase subdivision. We propose to expand on that as well as have a detention pond, a fairly significant buffer from Sunchase to our developable area. This is actually the edge of the parking lot, and the building would actually be over here. So just wanted to let you know we've taken that into consideration as we've done our layout. Here's just another view of that, of what we would expect to see with respect to that particular area. Planting some native grasses, some additional trees and vegetation along the Sunchase property line, here being the existing trees in the Sunchase and then the new trees that we would plant. Here's the south buffer yard elevation. Here again, County Road 100 South, as part of the construction plans that the town has put together. There will be landscaping for that roadway. This roadway is actually currently designated as a signature street within the zoning ordinance. So we're taking that into account as we do our development. This plan here actually shows somewhat what's been proposed for the County Road 100 South plans. And then this is additional landscaping that we're proposing to put in. We're working with staff to determine the amount of landscaping, to what degree, and all of that. And so just wanted to point out to you that we've attempted to take care of the areas we felt like were going to be most critical, mostly seen from a public standpoint. And so therefore, that's where we're at. I don't know that I have much more to say at this point. It's really more of a Q&A, or if you have any comments or thoughts. And like I said, you will see us next month, and then the following as more of another informational type meeting. And then the following month, that would be, let's see, this is July, right? August, September. In the September hearing, is our expectation we would come in with a public hearing, send out certified letters, notifications to everyone, and go from there. So, questions?
So, yeah, while you're here for the board, anything, what are you going to be looking for to talk about this? Are we looking at aesthetics? Are we looking at, detention pond safety? Are we looking at signals? Are we looking at breaks in the facade? What questions do we have for the proposed petitioner?
I have two concerns on this layout currently, is the truck traffic. Each one of the individuals that are going to have to take one of these buildings are going to want direct access. So you're looking at least 2-3 more entrances that they're going to request along as this goes along. And I also don't see enough parking for all the trucks that they're going to want to have in there as well. So those are just a couple of my initial concerns with seeing this layout.
In addition to the truck concern, do you foresee any kind of landscape mound on the east there to maybe buffer the neighbors from any lighting issues from the trucks pulling around, or parking lot lights?
More of a sound buffer is what
Yeah, sound buffer.
And
with everybody wearing masks, if you could speak up a hair, because it sounds a little muffled, especially for the audience as well. So it would be appreciated. Okay, sorry.
So I have a question as far as like what's unique about this that's driving a planned unit development?
And will you be holding another public hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Grant, question for you, because you're on the redevelopment, but is this part of that County Road 100 South TIF district?
Yes.
So this would be a good economic development for that area itself.
Are there any concerns about what might be leached into that pond from the trucks coming and going? don't want that to kind of become an oil slick, or I know these trucks have to be fairly well maintained, but they do run on dirty diesel.
There was some concern, I believe, that Brian and I discussed in the redevelopment commission is about the access to the roundabout, trucks getting around that. I think that was solved, I believe.
I was going to ask a question to you that, or to think about if there's going to be a lot of truck traffic on here, and I don't know if we're already planning that type of rework on the road to accommodate the truck traffic, or is this where the development needs to help us make sure that our roads will stay in good condition with the amount of traffic that'll be coming on 100 South? And could you go back to the front elevation, the landscaping there? I couldn't tell from, so is it mounded or is it just trees there?
Currently, we're just showing trees.
Okay. So something that just that I'd be interested in, maybe not the rest of the commission, but how you see the mounds on Ronald Reagan down in Plainfield that provide a barrier from the street, along with the plantings. I like what you have there, but just some other aesthetics to hide the warehouses.
Yeah, I think the ones on the south side of the street, if there is a mound, it's very subtle.
Yeah.
It's barely there. I would like to see some follow through on these trees. They look nice when they're planted, but if you drive 100 south, I don't know, a third of the trees have died and they've just left them. So some follow through to make sure these trees survive and thrive to provide the barrier they're supposed to provide.
And I think you were alluding to this earlier, but I kind of agree, but I don't see what's so unique about this, that it needs to be a PUD over just a commercial rezone.
Yeah, that's just to
Well,
explain
and
that.
from my view, certainly, these developments started 30 or 40 years ago in different areas. Now, since then, there've been a lot of changes and zoning issues and development issues. But I certainly think that the public perception of how this is going to be received has a lot to do with aesthetics. And although it is a subjective criteria, the aesthetics on how the facade's broken up, the different types of textures and abilities to differentiate the buildings, et cetera, I do think is an important aspect to the community acceptance of this type of facility.
And what would the depth be for these entrances, for these trucks trying to pull through these roundabouts into this complex? As he alluded to, each one's going to want their own entrance. If I'm trying to drive 100 south, am I going to have to go get through one circle, sit and wait while the truck is trying to turn in? Because that happens on Dan Jones, and traffic backs up behind it because the semi's trying to turn into CSX.
I'd also be interested in understanding how the rainwater drainage is going to be impacted. That's a significantly large amount of acreage that would normally be absorbing groundwater and is not going to be hardscaped. And I'd be very interested in seeing how that's going to impact any potential road flooding or how that's going to impact any storm systems.
Pervious pavement, perhaps?
Board, you had mentioned that you held a public meeting with the development to the east there, and only one resident showed up?
Actually, the public meeting was for everyone we would notify for the actual plan commission, right? And yes, just one gentleman showed up. He was in this third house to the east of the dead-end street up here.
Did he make any comments, or did he just take
his comments, and Des actually has the minutes from that meeting. Those were submitted per the ordinance requirements, but his effective comment was, okay, what are you doing with all the trees in the area, and what will that look like? And I don't know if anyone's gone out there and looked. There is a significant tree stand in there, of which we've done a survey on for, the ones that are on our property or on the property line. So we're actually going to add additional trees, a mound, as well as protect the existing trees that are in there.
What is the depth of that current tree line?
I'm sorry?
What is the depth of that current tree line? How far from your property to the Sunchase Woods is the trees?
I've got
And
a
I guess,
number. Right now.
how deep is that forest?
So I don't have their plat here in front of me. It seems like to me that on the subdivisions development, it's probably 50 feet or so. I can get you an answer to that. We'll have an answer at the next meeting. I can tell you, based on what we're doing with the buffer on our side plus that pond, we're probably pushing close to 200 feet before we would ever even hit the subdivision property line. And then there's additional buffer for the subdivision with that existing wooded area. So,
Did anybody from the neighborhood's HOA attend, or was this just a single resident?
single resident.
And do you know and was the HOA notified, or were individual homeowners notified?
It was most likely, well, I think the HOA would have had to have been notified because there's common area, on our property line. So, like I said, just one individual showed up and that was it.
And that's an old enough neighborhood that the HOA should be residents of the neighborhood. I don't think it's owned by a developer anymore, so.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Taylor, any concerns about our ordinances, anything in your view that we need to be particularly aware of in this situation, or upcoming potentials?
No, I think you've asked all the right questions.
Thank you.
And I guess this is kind of a question for you, Ryan. If this truck traffic is going to be going CSX, is 100 South project designed to allow the semis up through Dan Jones?
No, not up Dan Jones. We'll continue to have a truck restriction from that west flanking roundabout to Dan Jones, just like we have a restriction south of the CSX entrance. So currently, this does not contemplate a connection to the CSX rail yard. We've had some discussions with CSX, but you guys will see an expansion to the CSX intermodal next month, and they're not planning to have that connection. They don't think that's beneficial to their ability to operate the yard. So at this time, we're not sure we would want that either. We're not sure we want all the trucks coming that way from CSX either. So this way we kind of dissipate trucks. We've designed and built in, when we did our traffic study for 100 South, we assumed that this was going to be built out with truck traffic. And so our design for our road is done in a way to accommodate this development. I mean, we specifically did it in cooperation with Farmland Reserve and Duke, Browning Duke on their property. So we've planned that and we've built that into our road improvements.
But there's nothing preventing the trucks, if they wanted to, from using 100 South to Dan Jones. If that is an avenue for whoever occupies these buildings.
There'll be a town ordinance that will prohibit it. We have a gross vehicle weight ordinance, so we'll prohibit it. Now, it would require police as well. We've built in some design concepts to make it uncomfortable. Out of that west flanking roundabout, it's no longer 4 lanes once you leave that west flanking roundabout. From that west flanking roundabout to Ronald Reagan Parkway, it's 4 lanes. And so we're going to make it uncomfortable. The radiuses on that roundabout are tighter, so it's going to be more uncomfortable for trucks to go through there. As well as, it's not our intention to allow trucks out that west flanking roundabout. So we would, if they do want to go out, we'll prohibit them from going west. And so they'll only be able to come southbound and go east. Same coming out of Plainfield. If they come out of Plainfield in our agreement with Plainfield, there'll be restrictions for trucks to go west. They'll only be allowed to go east. So we've built that in. It'll be an important component of this land use. So there'll be things that we'll discuss to make sure that those issues are addressed as part of the land use as well, to not allow that. To maybe address your guys' questions real quick too, just so you know, on the access control, we've built access control into this. Because it's a signature street, it was supposed to have limited access. So these will, specifically the purpose of the roundabouts, the west flanking roundabout and the other one, is to accommodate those trucks with full access. There will not be any other full access on this corridor. We have committed to potentially, if meeting certain engineering criteria, that they may be able to have right-in, right-outs. but there will be no more additional full access other than what you're seeing on this plan. And we built that into our traffic modeling, and that's our plan. And these guys are already aware of it. Their tenants are going to be aware of it. Browning Duke's aware of it. So Plainfield's aware of it. Everyone knows this has been our stance, and that's what we're going to stick to, so.
And just to make clear, the intent is to not make it possible for trucks to scoot over to 267 and use that as an access, but to funnel everything to Ronald Reagan.
Correct. Not only just Avon Avenue, sorry, I like to call it Avon Avenue, trying to get that 267 out of people's minds, and Dan Jones. We don't want trucks on Dan Jones, and we don't want trucks coming from here to Avon Avenue. Trucks are permitted on Avon Avenue right now, so there's no restriction to that, but we don't want them coming from there to here. We want them coming up Ronald Reagan. Our traffic modeling shows that's what people will mostly want to do anyway. If you're going south, you're not going to want to go all the way to Avon Avenue and then come down and try to get to 70. It's going to be much faster for you to go that way. So we've built that in our traffic modeling, and we're going to force it to happen as well. So
Other major issues potentially for next meeting?
Well, Jim, we brought up in the past our concern about the ponds, providing some kind of preventative measures for mosquito control and so on, which I believe you brought that up, which has been a good concern. Aeration or whatever it takes to.
We talk about
Surface agitation will there be any surface agitation on that pond? I believe it's part of the subdivisions, but
Any what?
surface agitation, fountain, aeration,
We haven't thought about that or talked about that. It's not typical, but not something that we can't look into, so.
So one other, while you're considering that, is that for safety purposes, with that abutting the tree line of the neighborhood, be good to think about some sort of fencing or restrictive to keep kids out of that as much as possible,
Out of the,
out of the pond.
so are you talking about around the pond?
Something around the pond, and even at the minimum, it would seem to be something between the pond and the subdivision, just to inhibit easy access to that.
So our experience with fencing around the ponds, just so you know, is that really becomes almost more of a hazard than I'm just saying people get inside the fencing, they can't get out, and that tends to be more of a hazard, has been our experience in some of the studies that I've seen. We will look into that though, and just, if you look at that I guess it'd be our east line, the subdivision's west line, it's pretty significant tree line there, and I'm not sure that people are really walking back and forth through there, not to say that they couldn't, so.
I'd also be interested in seeing what plans you may have for preventing automobiles from accidentally sliding into the pond during icy weather. If there's even a small elevation between the parking lot and the pond, or some other barriers that would help to prevent that from happening. And also, I don't know how close it is to the south end of that, but the same type of thing.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by the south end.
The south end of that retention pond, the retention pond runs.
So we've
north and
got,
south,
yeah, we've
right?
got retention ponds pretty much running north and south where
So
it's
how
down
close-
here.
How close to the south end of those retention ponds to the road?
There's an ordinance, the town has an ordinance that we're to follow, and it's our intent to follow that ordinance or work with staff in addressing those particular issues, just so you know.
and will this property, just the whole perimeter of this property be fenced off, like the ones in Plainfield are all fenced off? Which kind of mitigates a bunch of the concerns. There's a fence line that runs along the warehouses in Plainfield.
I don't think so. Most of the fences are to fence off for the individual buildings. So most of these buildings, most of the buildings in Plainfield, they'll end up being half or quartered, and then they put fencing just around those particular quarters for the most part. It's not really around the entire site itself. if you go out and look at that, and that really becomes a safety issue and an access, ingress, egress issue for the individual tenants for those buildings. I can't think of any building that has a fence all the way around it.
Maybe I'm mistaken then, I thought it did.
Yeah. And I would highly suggest that you all go out and look at those buildings. I think that's really important for you just to get a sense, and that would be helpful for us as well, just to kind of understand, for us to understand what you're looking for. It's our intent to do a development that is as good or better than what's happening there. I will make the comment, we're trying to be competitive in the marketplace, so there are parameters that we have to stay within, or this project will not happen. So I just, and that's not a threat by any means, that's just the market itself. We're trying to stick with fairly similar standards as to what's south of us, what's happening not only in Plainfield, but Brownsburg or out at State Road 39. Pittsboro area is starting to get some more development of this sort. So just want everyone to understand that.
Other major points? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, really
Moving on.
appreciate it.
DPR 20-13, Avon Marketplace MOP. Staff.
DPR 20-13 Avon Marketplace MOB. This was continued from last month. Commissioners may approve, deny, approve with conditions, or continue this petition. It's located 120 Avon Marketplace. It's about 2.34 acres. You did approve the plat last plan commission, and so it's been split. They're requested to build a 12,000 square foot building. This will be a 2-story multi-tenant medical office building. The petitioner does have waivers requested with this petition. It's located in the Avon Marketplace commercial subdivision. To the north is the Goddard School and the American Health Network. To the east is the Hare Honda. To the south is the extra space storage. And then to the west is I-2 zoning. The history is you guys have approved the extra space storage. The Goddard had approved improvement as well, and so did Hare Honda with their extra outdoor storage. These are the criteria when discussing a waiver. These are the 4 waivers that were being requested for this particular petition. They want to increase the parking more than the 15% allowed, which that means it goes to the commissioners to decide. They want 120 parking spaces instead of the 99 that would be permitted. The second is they want to orient the building towards the Kingston Drive instead of US 36, which is required in Chapter 23. They want to use the Nichiha Curstone as the masonry requirement instead of what we have. And then they want to reduce the masonry requirement from 80% facing to about 42% masonry. Once again, this is the location. This is current site layout as well. We can go through some of the elevations of the building material. This is how it would look like if it was met the 80% masonry requirement, and this is how they want it to look. So you can see the full differences in the aesthetics. Okay. There was another thing. Commissioners had asked me to look up the masonry requirements that we have and local towns. The zoning ordinances of the towns near us do not really define masonry, kind of like ours, but Fishers does and Westfield does. Fishers does allow this fiber cement type Curstone, but Westfield does not allow it in their masonry requirement. I also have the definition of the masonry from our building code, if you guys want me to say that, but, or else not.
I'd like to hear it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Masonry is a built-up construction or combination of building units or materials of clay, shale, concrete, glass, gypsum, stone, or other approved units bonded together with or without mortar or grout or other accepted methods of joining.
That's pretty general.
So, should commissioners choose to approve all the waivers, then staff does recommend approval of DPR 20-13 Avon Marketplace with the following conditions: that any revised plans must comply with all commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. The petitioner must post a landscape bond prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy, and that the developer shall comply with all of it portions of town code and comments by Public Works, Fire Department, CRE at the pre-construction meeting.
Anything else, Des?
Now, that's everything on me.
Questions for staff?
I'll go through all the
Sorry?
questions on
Questions for
Entire-
staff on,
the entire package.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I have several questions here. On waiver one, on the off-street parking. On number 2, it says the petitioner believes the alternatives provide safe parking. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking for what does staff recommend on that? So the petitioner believes that. Is the staff recommendation is that the additional parking is needed, even though it exceeds the ordinance?
I wouldn't say it would be for the safety. I would say that it demonstrates consistency with ethical zoning district because it's a C2 zoning, and C2 zonings generally require the extra commercial parking, so it meets that intent in that manner. They do want some parking over on this side right here. So I guess you could say that that's for their safety, but I'm not sure about the safety portion, but the increase in parking is relevant.
Okay, that's why I want to make sure, because that wasn't in here. Then number 4 talks about the petitioner intends to build the south in the future, but there's no commitment to build the south. That's just a stated intent.
Yeah,
So it's the, without that is, I mean, we talked about this last time about should the parking be needed for something that's future but is not committed to, and is it needed? So I think that's something we need. Looking for that comment on that, Des, on far as, did you think that still met the intent?
I believe it's an improvement because the layout allows for better traffic flow for the future development and its own circulation as well. So you could argue for the improvement. They have shown intent in one of their exhibits. You can see the south and property line and how it actually works well with this current development as well.
I believe last time we had talked about a contingency that a shared parking agreement be a part of any deal. I don't know if you had the minutes or how we settled on that, but there was some talk about binding the extra parking to the development of a second lot.
Well, that would come in the second lot, though. This lot doesn't need any additional parking from someone else. The
Right, it was that if we approve, we were talking the approval of this parking would be contingent on them allowing a shared access with the second property.
So I'm saying it usually works the other way around. It's usually when that second property comes into you, then if they can't show that they have sufficient parking, then you'd require their approval to have that condition. I just think we're one step ahead of ourselves. Because you have to look at this side on its own. It doesn't need any cross-parking agreement. It just stands on its own. So although it's stubbing properly and all that, that's what Des says when he looks at how this circulation internally and exterior to the site seems to be well planned based upon what their future conditions are. It would be incumbent on the the user to the south to come in and ask, just demonstrate to you they can either meet the parking requirements or that they have a cross-parking agreement. This side stands on its own just fine.
And if I could speak a little bit more on the request, is that?
I'll hold the rest of my questions for the.
Other questions for staff? No other questions for staff? Okay, at this time, we'll have the petitioner come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Stephen A. Strike with Cornerstone, 8902 North Meridian Street, Suite 205, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Can you speak up a little bit for the audience? with
Yes,
the
sorry.
mask?
Stephen A. Strike with Cornerstone Companies. Address is 8902 North Meridian Street, Suite 205, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for the opportunity to gather additional information in support of our development plan. Our hope is that we can satisfy the commission tonight, and our goal would be to begin permitting and construction right away if we're allowed to. I'll introduce our same team members as last time. Gene Byerman with CHA, who represents our civil engineer. We've got Rob Ray from American Structure Point, representing our architecture design, as well as Brian Bogey, our counsel. And I'll let Gene start in with the conversation about the first waivers.
All right, for the record, Gene Byerman, I'm the civil engineer for this project, and with CHA Consulting, offices at 300 South Meridian in Indianapolis. So I'll try not to belabor the point too much because this is our second time up here. I will briefly introduce the project from a civil perspective before I pass along the mic to the project architect. So this project is a two-story, 24,000 total square foot medical office building. The zoning of the property is C2 commercial, so this is an appropriate use for the zoning. From a civil standpoint, this project is fairly straightforward, and we hope the waiver request is fairly straightforward. The ordinance requirement for parking, it's section 15-7. The ordinance requirement is for a minimum of 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet, with a maximum of 4.6 spaces per square feet. So as a point of clarification, I believe our allowable would actually be 113 per the ordinance. We currently show 120, so a slight increase on that. This use historically demands greater than the ordinance will allow. That's coming from not only the ownership group who's developing this, but also from there's ITE literature supporting that the 85th percentile requires at least 4.5 spaces per 1,000. We want to exceed the 85th percentile. We want 4.87 spaces per 1,000 square feet for this development. I think the historical data will back that up, and we hope you will consider this waiver. I'll also make brief mention before I pass it off to Rob, the architecture team. Des, are you able to zoom out at all on this?
Yeah.
One of the waivers is an architectural waiver, and if you recall, that was for the front of the building to be facing US 36 Rockville Road. We currently have it facing east towards what's called Avon Marketplace. I wanted to show this just to once again illustrate and reiterate that if we face our entrance directly north, it will, number one, be completely obstructed by Rockville Road, so it won't be visible in the first place. Number two, it will also, you'll lose functionality. As you drive passengers into a medical clinic, you typically want them to be coming with their passenger side door facing the entrance, as we have this turnaround shown here. That would be more difficult, and our natural frontage is on Avon Marketplace Road. So while that is a architectural variance, there is a civil case to be made for that waiver. So if you have any questions specific to civil, I'll be happy to answer them now or after we let Rob speak on his items.
Questions for petitioner?
The health network building, that's the way it's oriented currently, right? Towards just north?
Yes, exactly. It's got the entrance to the east.
Other questions, petitioner? So I have a couple. So you brought some samples today, is that right? Are these for you?
Correct, those were
Can you,
Rob,
can you kind of go over what those are, where they're going to be placed, and what the different samples are?
Yep. Rob Bray with American Structure Point, located at 9025 River Road, Suite 200, Indianapolis, 46240. And I'll apologize, there are not Girl Scout cookies in here. There are just samples, so I can't promise anything. But yeah, if you could go back to the elevations, I just quickly want to highlight the design, and then we can jump into the samples. So from last month's meeting, the discussion was about the use of the Nichihot system. So we proposed to use it for the entirety of all 4 elevations because we felt like this was a 4-sided architecture approach. But the materials we're using, while it's from the same manufacturer, they're all different uses and finishes. The major one being Curve Stone, which is their stone panel product. And so that's why we're asking.
So that's the one you have here?
Yes. I've got additional samples, but yeah, this is their Curve Stone product. It's a masonry panel system or fiber cement panel system.
Okay.
There's a sample here, and I've got more samples if anybody wants to. So the design intent is to use that Curve Stone panel for the entirety of the base of the building. Part of the ordinance requirements are to use materials and a variety of materials to give it articulation, to give it depth of feel, and so we feel like this panel, and I'm going to jump back and forth between the waivers, but the use of the stone panel is consistent around the building, so what we don't want to do is do 80% of panel on one side of the building because it becomes a very flat elevation. We have a lot of glass and metal panel that's being accented throughout the building to help articulate some of the entry features. And so we also want to balance that with the wood panel, which is the espresso, which is another sample we provided here. So at the entry feature, you can see kind of the darker material. So this would be for the signage band and for entry wayfinding, and to help break up the elevation there on the main east side. And then finally, we've got a smooth panel. It's called their Illumination Series. And so again, the goal would be to use those variety of materials. They're all provided by Nichihot, so they're on.
So the one in your right hand would be where?
This would be for the top half. So you can see the stone would be the extent of the bottom half of the building, and this would be what would be on top of that. So,
Okay, so my real question is, when I look at the sample over here, is that the same thing?
Yeah, this is the same thing.
Backside says for interior use only.
Internal use only, not interior.
Internal use only?
Yeah, the reason
Okay.
for internal use only.
All right, I might have misread that. Just checking.
No problem.
Seeing if you're reading.
Yeah,
well, you know.
And so we have samples. Again, the goal is to have 4-sided architecture. We do have a lot of glazing at the entry feature, so kind of jumping back to the waiver about having the entry to the east, we've pulled out the entry sequence so it has a 2-story grand entry feature with a lot of glass that's visible from Avon Marketplace as well as from US 36. And we continued that same language around to the north side of the building, so it does have that front-like facade, which is obviously the ordinance intent for having facades facing US 36. We felt like we've met the intent of the ordinance and having an easily identifiable and experience as patients arrive at the facility with that entrance to the east. We do have, from the last meeting, we went back and did information on the actual product language. We did put together a report that I had sent to Des, identifying projects that we've done in the general vicinity that have used these products. And as he mentioned, we've worked with other jurisdictions, most notably Plainfield and Fishers, to use the exact same products. So we went through and identified some projects that are here in Avon that use these exact same materials, as well as probably most notably The major tenant for this facility that's planning to come to Avon is Urology of Indiana. And so their facility in Fishers is only a one-story building, but it's using the exact same building and exact same color scheme as part of their branding application. And so their intent was to be able to carry that through, so between their two facilities, it has consistency.
Is the upper, on the rooftop surround, whatever you want to call it, is that the same as one of these products, or is it something different?
Nope, it's the same product, so we'd be using that.
So that'll be on this front, on the gray, but also on the surround here?
Yes.
I just want to ask, the Fishers building, then all it uses is all the same material, just like what you're proposing here?
That's correct.
Are there buildings in Plainfield that you could indicate that we might know that use that?
The Embassy Suites facility, it uses the smooth panel and the wood panel. We didn't use any stone there, there wasn't a requirement for it, but they considered the fiber cement to be a cementitious product, which met the intent of their masonry use.
Yeah.
Questions?
The fourth waiver for the masonry requirement facing US Highway 36.
Yeah.
Is that necessary if we approve the second waiver for building orientation?
Yeah, 'cause it's about just what's facing 36, that's
So
where that
that's part
entails.
of that requirement is the overlay district.
That's,
Chapter
yeah.
23, section 2318.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not.
Other questions?
Should those two waivers not be combined since they're the same chapter and section?
Well, you can combine them however you'd like, but they are different standards.
Okay. No other questions? Then we're going to open up the public comment at 7:59. So has anyone signed up to speak, Des, do you know? Yeah. Sorry, nobody's,
No one signed up.
okay, is there anything online?
There's none. I'm monitoring, there's none.
Okay. Is there anyone here that would care to speak on this that didn't sign up to speak? And no internet, is what I heard, right? No internet? All right, then at 8 o'clock, I'll close public comment. Any other questions for petitioner? Or staff? Or legal? All right.
General discussion.
I'm sorry, discussion?
So just, the last meeting, we were talking about whether, I think the materials would meet our masonry requirement.
Right.
The stone, I think that's a nice addition. I think wherever we go with this, we need to start looking at this material and see, does it fall into acceptable or be explicit and exclude it? It's something that we need to have staff do at the minimum. The thing that, the rain screen seems to be where I look at that, and it just seems to, for me, borderline that. Is it really masonry? It's hard for me to tell. And is it an improvement on the materials not to have masonry? Is it improvement to what we have, like with the car dealerships when they brought their materials forward and we said, hey, this was an improvement to our ordinances? And that's the only one there that I'd look at, maybe it's the gray one, where it seems to, I'd be interested in other commissioners' opinions on that.
Interested
In what the commissioners thought about, does that really meet the intent of masonry there?
I feel it does.
Des, can you read can you read the definition of masonry again?
From the building? Okay.
Loud and proud, Des.
built-up construction or combination of building units or materials of clay, shell, concrete, glass, gypsum, stone, or any other approved units bonded together with or without mortar or grout or other accepted methods of joining.
So any other approved units in terms of composition, which is basically anything, and then join together any way that we want it to. I mean, it leaves, to me, the definition of masonry is whatever we decide is masonry. I mean, it's just so broad.
The samples that are tested for the burn test here, it describes it as a flat fiber cement sheets. So,
Other questions?
Description saying it's fiber.
Questions,
cement-based
comments, discussion?
material. As a fiber cement-based material, I think it falls into that it's made with a cement or concrete as it's spelled out. It's made of concrete and it's just made to resemble something else. So I think it is masonry by that definition.
I would agree. Should we move for approval, or do we?
Questions, I'm sorry? Other questions, comments?
Mr. President, in regards to the first waiver, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the increased minimum parking by 21% or 120 spaces, parking spaces as shown on their development plan.
I second.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All right, Des, vote.
Ms. Ransberg?
Approved.
Mr. Guckenberger?
Against?
Ms. Albers?
Approved.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Four.
Mr. Petridis?
4.
Mr. Bischoff?
In favor.
Mr. Duval?
4.
Motion passes.
Moving on.
Mr. President, in regards to the second waiver, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the building orientation to face Avon Marketplace instead of US Highway 36.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, Des?
Ms. Albers?
4.
Mr. Niemeyer?
4.
Mr. Petridis?
4.
Mr. Bischoff?
4.
Mr. Duval?
4.
Ms. Ransberg?
4.
Mr. Guckenberger?
4.
Passes.
Before we get to waiver 3, Mr. Taylor, can you tell me, or Des, can you tell me the difference between, this says it's not considered masonry, and is that because we have a different definition?
No, I guess I wrote it that way because it doesn't specifically say it's curved stone or fiber cement in our, when it talks about just brick, stone, that kind of thing.
Paperwork you had prior
So-
tonight,
Huh?
paperwork that you had prior tonight did not describe this material as fiber cement?
No, I'm saying in here, it doesn't exclude fiber cement or this curved stone as it. It says that you guys can decide if it counts as masonry requiring it. And so it's not in here specifically, and so it would be your determination to then make.
So, I know we're in the middle of this, but Mr. Taylor, does this mean moving forward down the road, we should look at our definitions or add definitions?
Yes, I agree with what was said earlier about looking at definitions, because over time, these new products come out. Fiber cement is being used in a lot of different ways than it was 10 years ago. So we need to look at the definitions about, particularly with building materials, because our definitions really don't allow much flexibility with what I would call modern. So
And-
I've made a note of that, we'll talk about it.
Okay, and very quickly, from my standpoint, fiber cement 50 years ago existed, but it was full of asbestos, so therefore you have a fiber cement product that was also a hazard. So if we do look at that, I think we might want to add that caveat at that point about non-hazardous or something to that effect when we go through those definitions. But moving forward, waiver 3.
I would like to request that we ask KK, our new planning department manager, director, is that the title? To propose a new definition at the next meeting.
Okay. We can do that.
And I would also like to ask, Mr. Taylor, do we need to have a motion accepting these products as acceptable under our current standards?
If you grant the waiver, you resolve the problem for this case.
Okay.
Otherwise, what Des said is the definition of masonry is not specific enough to allow him to make a determination as to whether this product is masonry. And so the ordinance tells him to turn that over to you guys and allow you to accept whatever alternative materials you choose. And so if you grant the waiver, you solve it for this case, and then KK can work on a better definition that either tries to be more inclusive or defines it by category, like the building code talks about it more categorically in terms of what masonry means, as opposed to limiting yourself to just a couple, what I would call material types.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the third waiver request for the use of the, how do you pronounce this, guys?
Yeah, Kirstone, Nisha Kirstone.
Nitschke.
Cornerstone rain screen system as a masonry product.
Discussion. Is there a second? I'll say a second. Is there discussion? Okay, moving forward. Des.
Mr. Petridis?
4.
Mr. Bischoff? 4. Mr. Duval?
4.
Ms. Ransberg?
4.
Mr. Guckenberger?
4.
Ms. Albers?
4.
Mr. Niemeyer?
4.
Motion passes.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that for the fourth waiver request to reduce the masonry requirements of the building facing U.S. Highway 36 in regards to Chapter 23, Section 2318.
I second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Okay, vote.
Mr. Duval?
4.
Ms. Ransberg?
4.
Mr. Guckenberger?
4.
Ms. Albers?
4.
Mr. Niemeyer?
4.
Mr. Petridis?
4.
Motion passes.
And finally, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve DPR 20-13, the Avon Marketplace MOB, subject to the following conditions. Any revised plans must comply with all commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. The petitioner must post a landscape bond prior to the issuance of a COI or CFO. The development shall comply with all relevant portions of town code and comments by Public Works, Fire Department, DLZ at the pre-construction meeting.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Okay, Des.
Mr. Niemeyer?
4.
Mr. Petridis?
4.
Mr. Bischoff?
4.
Mr. Duval?
4.
Ms. Ransberg?
4.
Mr. Guckenberger?
4.
Ms. Albers?
4.
Motion passes.
Motion granted. Thank you. Moving on. DPR 2015 Avon Landing. Before you guys leave, you got some samples, I don't know, do you want those samples?
I haven't used them, you're welcome to have them.
Could be a slow increment.
DPR 20-15 Avon Landing Infrastructure Development Plan Review. This is the first consideration before the Plan Commission. Commissioners may approve, deny, approve conditions, or continue the petition. It's located off 2375 North County Road 900 East. It's about 120 acres. And this is basically to approve the development plan for the road infrastructure and the drainage ponds that will serve, at least for now, Block B of the Avon Landing PUD. A little history is we've heard Avon Landing PUD when it was approved. There was the Avon Landing Apartments that happened across the way that was withdrawn. And then we had the Avon Landing North Substation that was approved. It's located, this is Brownsburg right here. It's located right 300, Country Road 300 East. To the north, the property is zoned AGR and is located in Hendricks County and contains the B&O Trail and vacant land. To the east, the property is zoned AJR and is located in Hendricks County and contains farmland. To the south, the property is zoned R1 and contains farmland. And then to the west, the property is zoned PUD Avon Landing, and right now is just farmland or vacant. This is currently what it looks like. And then you can see the drainage pond here, and then the road that will serve this section of Block B. They will come back with some amendments and plat amendments to increase the road and as more and more developments come in. Staff does recommend approval of DPR 20-15 Avon Landing infrastructure with the following conditions: that any revised plans must comply with all commitments and conditions noted as any approval granted. The petitioner must post a landscape bond prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy, and the developer shall comply with all relevant portions of town code and comments made by Public Works, Fire Department, CRE at the pre-construction meeting.
Questions for staff? Any questions for staff? Okay, petitioner, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Scott Senefeld. I'm with the Veritas Group. We're at 6280 North Shadeland Road, Indianapolis. Appreciate council's time this evening and hearing this project, and obviously also appreciate the work with planning and follow-up of the primary plat to bring you the phase one of this development. As Des mentioned, we'll just use his graphic as well as another that we've got supplemented this evening. We can, but this is the phase one of the overall parcel. Basically encompasses just under 60 acres, including the first road as shown. There is lot 2 of Block B, which currently has a proposed end user. That is the middle parcel. I'd point to that, Des, if I could borrow your pointer. Block 2 right there at the top. Then obviously that leaves the Block 1, which is at the southeast corner there. No, just up north of the road right there. Those two will be the lots, the only lots as part of this first phase. The rest will remain open blocks for future development. We've worked with both utility and planning and bringing obviously associated easements to the property, and the detention pond and drainage obviously is proposed here, which will serve that phase. Any immediate questions so far?
Is there any deviation from the original PUD submitted to the town that you're showing here?
No, this is primarily the bones of the initial plat that was submitted 2 years ago in the PUD. Again, this will bring that first phase to service those first 2 lots, that the second of which has an end user, and to allow some flexibility for the remaining development. But it does follow in line with the first submittal.
Des made mention to amendments and waivers coming our way. Would you mind running through what these are going to be and how they affect this phase?
But they don't affect this phase. What's gonna happen is, when this guy comes in, he'll have to come in through a DPR and out, and then this guy as well. And then if anybody else wants to come in here, they'll have to get the plat amendments in order to create these lots, and then the DPR to then build again. I was just letting you know, this isn't the end. This is just for this road right here and this pond. And this road allows for this user to come in. They wanted to come in, but they kind of jumped the gun. And so now we're putting in the road so they can get it there.
At one of our initial training session for this year, I don't remember if you were there or not, Judge, but I made comment to these type of DPRs being administrative issues, so that they wouldn't have to come here if there's no deviation from the original PUD or whatever the original DPR was itself. So I'd like to bring that up again, that this is kind of one of those things to where there's no change, it's kind of been approved by us already, you know, and you're already telling us that we're gonna have to see this 3 more times in the next couple months, so I feel it should be an administrative event.
Okay. Questions for petitioner? No? Okay, public hearing? At 7:59, oh no, 7:19. Anyone sign up to speak? 8:19, I'm sorry. And this time I can't blame the mask and the glasses, I just can't see.
We're flying through.
All right, we got one person, Blair.
I'm just signed up, I'm with the petitioner.
Okay. And no one is signed up here.
Online, anything? Okay. In that case, at 8:20, we will close public hearing. So they had 1 hour and 2 minutes, 1 minute. At this point, any other questions?
At what point does that pond get filled in this development process?
At what pond?
The detention pond, at what point does it get filled with water?
Well, it's obviously designed to take the shed for that first phase, so it won't happen overnight, but as soon as that infrastructure is in place, it'll start to do its job.
Oh, okay, so it just fills up naturally, you don't pump it?
No, it is designed for the drainage shed.
Does when you're attacking this PUD section by section have anything to do with the thick concrete runway that's out there still?
Well, obviously, it's bite an elephant one piece at a time, obviously. So the first phase intent, as I mentioned, the second lot there is negotiation for user there. It's just kind of the natural progression to take down that parcel.
How many phases are you intending for this? Excuse me.
You want to jump in there?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. My name's Tom Dickey. I'm a manager of real estate for Hageman Group, and we're the developer of this project, so I recognize faces from 3 or 4 years ago. I'll jump back to that question about phasing. Not so much about the runway. We decided to go north for 2 primary reasons. One is we're in discussions, through discussions with the town and with Farmland Reserve, who owns, you talked about earlier tonight, owns that 200 acres down by Warner South. They own 900 acres around this project. And it should be master planned together, stormwater and street access, and that should be planned. And so going north allowed us the flexibility over the next year to work with Farmland Reserve and coordinate that, which may be a little different than how our PUD is shown there on the south, so that may change. And then secondly, we really want to make small lots available for build-to-suit users, so not the big bombers that you looked at earlier, the smaller, and that's what this north area is. So that was the 2 main reasons we decided to go north.
Other questions? Okay, someone make a motion?
Staff recommends approval of DPR 20-15 Avon Landing's infrastructure addition with the following conditions. Any revised plans must comply with all the commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. The petitioner must post a landscape bond prior to issuance of the certificate of occupancy. And lastly, the development shall comply with all relevant portions of town code and comments by Public Works, Fire Department, DLZ at the pre-construction meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Vote, please.
Mr. Duval?
For.
Mr. Bischoff? In favor. Mr. Prius?
4.
Mr. Neubauer? For. Ms. Albers?
4.
Mr. Gutenberger?
For.
Ms. Ransberg?
4.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
DPR 20-16 Camden Townhomes Development Plan Review.
DPR 20-16 Camden Townhomes. This is the first consideration before the Plan Commission. Commissioners may approve, deny, approve of conditions, or continue the petition. It's located at the northwest intersection of County Road 100 North and Ronald Reagan. It's about 10 acres, and they want to approve a development plan to build about 83 townhome units there. This is the last development available for the Reagan Park development. You know it mostly for Camden. They've come in and done about 5 sections and an amenity area. There was also the Traditions at Reagan Park that happened not too much before that. It's located in the Reagan Park PDD. To the north is Regency, and then Brownstone's over here as well. This is Ronald Reagan, and this is 100 North. This is a better look out at the development. These are the initial sections. I believe they're on section 3 at the moment. They do have some of the infrastructure there. This is Traditions at Reagan Park. This is assisted living facility here. And then this is the Camden Townhomes. As you can see here, a little more laid out. These are private streets. That's the detention. These are the elevations. They're there, the types of townhomes. They can go from 4 to 3 to 5, I believe. Or 6, 4, 5, 6. Staff does recommend approval of DPR 20-16 Camden Townhomes with the following conditions: that any revised plans must comply with all relevant portions of any approval granted, that the petitioner must post a landscape bond prior to the issuance of certificate, and that the development plan shall comply with all relevant portions of the town code and comments made by Public Works, Fire Department, CRA at the pre-construction meeting, and that any revised plans must comply with commitments and conditions as noted of any approval granted.
Questions for staff? Okay, no questions. In that case, if the petitioner please come forward.
Good evening, Kyle Icorn, HWC Engineering, 135 North Pennsylvania Street, Suite 2800, Indianapolis, Indiana. Thanks for having us this evening. Des did a pretty good job of covering it. It's 83 units on 10 acres, and it kind of completes the Camden area there. And you can see all the single family around it, and so this is kind of between that single family use and then the apartments and the retirement community to the south. And that's really it, if you have any questions regarding the civil part of it.
Questions for petitioner? Okay, hearing none. Des, anyone sign up to speak?
No one signed up to speak?
Online? Oh, I'm sorry. Open up public hearing at 8:25. No one signed up. We're going to close at 8:26. Oh, sorry. Has anyone in the audience that would care to comment on this that has not had a chance to speak? Okay, in that case, hearing none at 8:26. Apologize. Okay. Questions, discussions? Motions?
I'll make a motion, Mr. President. I move that we approve DPR 20-16 Camden Townhomes, subject to the following conditions. Any revised plans must comply with all commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. The petitioner must post a landscape bond prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, and the development shall comply with all relevant portions of town code and comments by Public Works, Fire Department, DLZ at the pre-construction meeting.
Second.
A motion is second. Any discussion? Okay, vote.
Ms. Ransberg?
4.
Mr. Kuchenberger?
4.
Ms. Alves?
4.
Mr. Niemeyer? 4. Mr. Petridis?
4.
Mr. Bischoff? 4. Mr. Duval?
4.
Motion passed.
Okay. Other business, a couple of things. Mr. Cannon, KK, and Des, first of all, my apologies for misreading internal versus interior. So if you can convey that to the petitioner, it would be appreciated. That's kind of a big one, you know. Somebody should be smart on that. With even my glasses fog up with this match, shouldn't matter. Number 2, moving forward, KK, if on our presentations on both the Avon staff reports for the Avon Landing infrastructure and staff recommendations for the Camden Townhomes, I believe the font was either an 18 or a 16, and if the audience is here to participate in our meetings, they should be able to read it a little better. So I would appreciate if we could go to a minimum of 20, but maybe a 22 or 24 font on those. It would be appreciated. I think it's important that they can see what's presented. It adds to credence and credibility for the entire commission, I believe. They can see what we're talking about. And then anything else under other business? Anyone?
Just to make sure that we have an action item that we're looking at adding the Nietzsche products.
Or
If I
definitions?
mispronounced that, but what we just saw tonight, to get that included, a recommendation to add that to our ordinances as acceptable material.
Or I wouldn't go as far as naming that product, just expanding the definition in such a way that it would encompass that type of product without a waiver.
I agree.
Because I don't want to shoehorn us into, okay, we've added this to the list. Now they want to use a different brand that has a slightly different formulation, so they have to go through a waiver process again.
I agree with that.
We can do that, we know, KK's written ordinances before, so.
Charles, you had a thing about bringing the infrastructure kind of projects up, making those administrative?
Yeah, burning such DPRs as this. as
Our ordinance
administrative.
requires that if you're gonna change the traffic flow or add a public street, that it has to come through you guys, and so that's that. Would have to be another
Yeah, we'll look at,
amendment?
yeah, we'll look at the statute, though, you know, you can't just get rid of public hearings, so we'll have to look at, KCAT will look at that and see if that's something that we can delegate to staff or not.
Yeah, it's just, I don't.
I've
like
got it
these-
written down.
Yeah, I don't like these piecemeal things.
I don't blame you. We used to call that tertiary review, which meant if it was really annoying, we just let the staff do it, so. Like final plats, they used to do those here. We finally got rid of those, but, yeah, if it's allowed under the statute, then you're gonna see some text amendments coming your way, and, you know, we already have a couple working on, and then these building materials and this procedure, we'll throw them all in there and let you guys will have to recommend on those before they go to the town council anyway, so you'll be the first people to see them.
Yeah, I'm really surprised they came forward with that, because the mobilization cost alone, just to get the equipment out there to put this in for one road, and then they're gonna do it again, I mean, who knows when, but why not just put all of it in?
It's usually money.
Well, yeah, I know, just to get the backhoe out there is a couple of grand, I mean.
Someone really wants that house.
The amount of land that they're going to be able to sell with just that one road is significant. Yeah, that detention pond that they're constructing, you saw, is quite large. It's gonna It's a big area to sell, so.
They're gonna try to sell what's closest to the main parkway first, and that's where they'll get their highest return, I'm sure.
Whatever it is, it better look good.
I agree.
So before we move on, a couple other little caveats. I think Mr. Bischoff did this, but certainly as president, I would like to welcome KK and Mr. Cannon to their positions, and we appreciate their efforts and jumping in and stepping in and trying to move us forward as a body, so we appreciate that. As logistics, I know we have signatures up here and then adjournment. I believe we can adjourn and then we can do the signatures, so that everybody else doesn't have to stay. Logistically, I believe that's possible. So is there anything else under old business before we go there?
Just like to get on record and say thanks, Des, for the years of service and good
Yes.
luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you. And I'd like to say, make sure you study hard. Make us proud at Iowa State, and good luck with your master's.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Get your masters and come back.
And they are not the tornadoes, they are the cyclones. Don't ever make that mistake.
We'll keep KK under contract till you're done.
Promise her I wouldn't do that to her.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Free.
Mr.
One more tackle.
Pope, before you leave, can I talk to you briefly?